What's up, guys? Artem MMA Analysis here in the first video, I guess, to kind of kickstart a crazy week of fights coming up, man. What we've got is we've got PFL 2022 number 1 coming up in 4 days, 1 championship in 5 days, LFA 130, UFC Fight Night, and then 2 back-to-back Bellator cards, which is going to be absolutely insane. I think that Bellator 278 and Bellator 279 are going to be 2 cards back to back from each other, which is pretty crazy. So we've got so many cards to cover. We've got PFL, Bellator times 2, UFC, and then LFA 130 as well. I will be trying to cover as well. But to start it off, I'm going to be covering PFL 2022 number 1, taking place in about 4 days time, and it is headlined by the PFL newcomer and UFC veteran Jeremy Stephens versus the PFL veteran in Clay Collard. So I'm going to be moving down, starting off at the bottom. We've got 10 fights to look through, and immediately we've got Simeon Powell versus Clinton Williams. It's worth noting that this fight is not part of the tournament that PFL is doing, and man, this is a very crazy fight. Clinton Williams, in case you guys didn't know, actually fought for PFL 6 years ago in World Series of Fighting, which is the same which is PFL. That just used to be called a World Series of Fighting. Took a decent amount of time off, now he's come back. He's 38 years old though, and I feel like at this point in his career, he's not really fighting to try and earn himself like a big UFC contract or a big PFL contract or something like that. When Simeon Powell, on the other hand, is weighs in 205 pounds with a 6'5" height and an 80-inch reach. I think Simeon Powell is definitely a prospect to look out for. He won a pretty good decision over Tobias Baker in his last fight. He's 5-0, and I think that the PFL are going to continue to build this guy up against pretty respectable opponents, since he did win on the Challenger Series a few days ago, actually. So he's making a very quick turnaround. He's fighting Clinton Williams, and Clinton Williams still going to be a game opponent, even though he is 38 years old. A decent couple of wins, 6-4 and 25-16, ain't really too bad for someone that's fighting just on the regional scene there. And yeah, I'm going to be going with Simeon Powell to win the fight personally, but yeah, that's it for that one, I guess. Okay, so this is where we get into the tournaments. We get into the guys that have entered in the PFL tournament style. And I've got Rob Razor Wilkinson to win this fight, guys. Yes, I'm going with the dog. Yes, I'm going with the guy that no one is picking. But I like Razor Rob Wilkinson to win this fight. He's moving up to 205 pounds, where hopefully he's going to be finding more success in a 6'3" frame with his 80-inch reach. He's going to have a lot bigger than Bruce Souto in the cage. Rob Wilkinson, I know, since he got cut from the UFC, he's been struggling to find fights on the Australian regional scene. He fought an 18-10 Dylan Andrews and a 9-6 Daniel Almeida. But in between that, he's also been fighting in boxing fights, and I think he's actually got a kickboxing fight thrown in there too. Yeah, a couple of kickboxing fights and a boxing fight as well. Just trying to get fights are being made up, I guess. Bruce Souto, though, is a savage. He's on a good win streak over actually very good levels of competition, to be fair, for a guy fighting the regional scene. But he's almost 33 years old. Travis Davis as well was the guy that he knocked out a couple of months ago on the Challenger Series. So I'm going with Rob Wilkinson to upset Bruce Souto's debut. Seriously, I'm going to be going with Rob Wilkinson to just have the better stand-up, and I'm going to be trusting Rob Wilkinson to use his kickboxing to win the fight, man. Everyone here is saying that he's Adesanya's son, but you know what, like, his run in the UFC wasn't too bad. Like, he did lose to a guy that no one knows about, and then he was kind of fed to Adesanya. But since then, man, I feel like he has made some improvements, and I think that he's got what it takes to beat a guy like Bruce Souto. Omari Akhmedov versus Viktor Pesta. Omari Akhmedov, a decent fall from grace in a way. Like, he was coming off a win in the UFC, and then he's coming off a split decision loss in the UFC. He got cut, and then fought in PFL sometime last year against Jordan Young, who unfortunately passed away. So thoughts are with him, with his family and friends. And Viktor Pesta, decent enough regional scene guy. Got a win over a guy 20-4, 8-2. And 26-15 over an octagon. Like, he's finding good levels of competition on the regional scene. Omari Akhmedov, although pretty good staple, I guess, in the UFC. He beat Ian Heinisch, he lost to Chris Weidman, but then he beat Tom Breeze. Like, he has got good wins and losses inside the UFC. He didn't win his PFL debut, and he's an older guy. He's about 35. I think Viktor Pesta trained out of Sanford MMA. I think the guys in Sanford MMA are going to help him out a little bit here in this fight. I'm going to be going with Viktor Pesta to win the fight. I'm thinking more of like a decision by keeping the fight on the feet. But I'm going to be going with Viktor Pesta to use his height and a reach advantage onside the feet to get the job done by a decision over Omari Akhmedov in this one here. Marthin Hamlet versus Teodoras and anyway, Teodoras. I'm going with Marthin Hamlet to win the fight. I actually think there's a decent amount of people picking. No, there's not. I'm thinking of someone else. I'm going with Marthin Hamlet to win this fight. I think he did pretty good last year. I think he made it pretty far into the end of the season last year. He won a couple of fights. He beat Dan Spone by submission. He lost to Cory Hendricks by submission. Beat Cesar Ferreira by KO, and then ended up getting submitted by the guy who ended up winning. But Marthin Hamlet, from memory, I think he filled in on late notice or something. I think it might have been this one here, because this was for the to win the whole the tournament, I believe. Yeah, this is to win the tournament. So Marthin Hamlet made it to the finals last year, and now he's fighting a newcomer in Teodoras Anglicus who hasn't fought in 4 years. Marthin Hamlet by like submission or decision is my pick, man. He hasn't fought for 4 years. That's kind of all I really need to know. Marthin Hamlet all day in this one, in my opinion. Stevie Ray versus Alex Martinez. Stevie Ray is coming out of retirement after getting cut by the UFC, even though he's coming off a win over Michael Johnson. He lost to Leonardo Santos. Leonardo Santos is low-key a bit of a savage. He did beat Justin Ayari and lost to Kajan Johnson and Paul Felder himself. But Stevie Ray coming out of retirement now, 32 years old, to fight a pretty game opponent in Alex Martinez. He was undefeated at one point with a win over Loik Radzhabov, and I personally do rate the win over Loik Radzhabov pretty highly. But then he did lose to Natan, Schulte, and Loik Radzhabov again. But Loik Radzhabov's pretty good, man. And Alex Martinez is still a pretty promising prospect, in my opinion. Stevie Ray does have a pretty good wrestling background. And very interested to know who's going to be the favorite in the odds for this one. I think Stevie Ray's like the fan favorite to win. Coming out of retirement to make a run in the PFL, I respect it. I'm going to be going with Stevie Ray to kind of out-wrestle Martinez to a decision win. But, you know what? Martinez is actually a pretty live underdog, in my opinion, as well. Emiliano Sordi versus Cory Hendricks. Cory Hendricks fought on The Ultimate Fighter a few years ago. He's actually one of, I think he's a friend of, what's his name? He lost to him, or he beat him, I think. Khalil Roundtree. He's a friend of the Khalil Roundtree. Made it to the finals, but then lost and didn't get a contract. And then, yeah, pretty much moving on. He's now fighting in PFL, but that's really what I remember Cory Hendricks from, was his run in The Ultimate Fighter. Lost to Chris Camozzi, but he did beat Marthin Hamlet in his PFL debut. Now he's fighting Emiliano Sordi, who's a bit of a savage, but he was shown last year, or he was kind of exposed last year to not have cardio outside of the first round, really. A lot of first round finishes, good submission here over a good opponent. Knocked out Jordan Johnson, beat Chris Camozzi by decision, draw with Dan Spone by decision, and then he lost to Antonio Carlos Jr. by decision. But he has kind of proven to have not the best cardio in the world. So Emiliano Sordi, if he wants to win the fight, he's probably going to have to try and get a finish in this one. And Sordi, I think, is probably game to get the finish. But you know what? I will be going with Sordi. But he's going to have to finish the fight in the first round, or win the first and second round, in my opinion, to win. But Hendricks, overall, he's pretty well rounded. He does train at a Syndicate MMA. He does hold a good win over Khalil Roundtree, albeit on The Ultimate Fighter, and it's an exhibition match. But you know what? Like, I'd like Emiliano Sordi. Emiliano Sordi's a favorite fighter's favorite fighter. Emiliano Sordi's going to come to bang, and I think Emiliano Sordi will win the fight over Cory Hendricks in this one here. I'm not going to give you a prop, though. I'm not too confident. And speaking of no confidence, you know what? This is probably one of the hardest fights to pick on the card, if not the hardest fight to pick on the card. Natan Schulte, man, he's a pretty game opponent. He's been fighting in PFL last year. He's the one that took Alex Martinez off him. But prior to that, he did lose to Marcin Howard, who is, once again, like a pretty game veteran and he also beat Luke Rudzhabov, Akhmed Aliyev, and Ramsey Nisham. You guys know that I do take the wins over Luke Rudzhabov pretty seriously, because Luke Rudzhabov is a very good opponent in my opinion. And I think he's actually signed to Eagle FC right now. But moving on, Olivier Aubin-Mercier was cut from the UFC after losing to Arman Sarukian, Gilbert Burns, and Alexander Hernandez. That's a pretty crazy 3-fight run, and it's very understandable that he lost all 3 of those fights. But since then, he beat Marthin Howard, who beat Natan Schulte, and he beat Daryl Horcher, who beat who's just good in general. Daryl Horcher is pretty good in general. And you know what? I'm going to be going with Olivier Aubin-Mercier to win the fight by a decision, but I will not be surprised whatsoever if Schulte wins. I feel like Schulte will probably be the favourite to win this fight, but I'm going to be going with Aubin-Mercier straight up. I'm just going to pick him to win a decision. That fight was made pretty late notice as well, by the way. Okay, so Antonio Carlos Jr. versus Delan Monte. Antonio Carlos Jr., he got cut from the UFC off the loss to Brad Tavares. Came into a PFL, submitted Tom Lawler, and no contest to Vinny Magahales, but then he beat Emiliano Sordi by decision, and then submitted Martin Hamlet in the finals, and now he is the 2021 PFL finalist and winner. So he won the $1 million last year. Good for Antonio Carlos Jr., definitely the biggest payday of his career, and now he's fighting a newcomer to the PFL, Delan Monte, who is actually pretty game. He's got a couple of submissions himself, a good KO power as well. But I don't think he's game as ACJ. I don't think he's game as Carlos Jr. here. And I'm going to be going with Carlos Jr. by submission to win this one here. I think that Carlos Jr. is going to be a little bit too soon for a guy like Delan Monte, who is an up-and-coming prospect at 205 pounds. This one here is very interesting because Raush Manfio is the winner. He won for the lightweight last year in PFL. And he is the picked to lose, I think, against Don Madge, which is pretty crazy. Don Madge, if you guys don't know, was fighting the UFC. I think he got cut to the UFC mainly because he had a lot of visa issues, or maybe he's just let go of the UFC because he couldn't fight. He couldn't get into the country. But now he's got a so that's Kutaladze injury there. But Mustafayev withdrew, Kutaladze withdrew, Madge visa issues. So actually there's only one fight there that was cancelled due to Don Madge having visa issues, but I do know that it was a problem for the UFC, so they have let him go. But now Don Madge has a working visa. He's been signed to a PFL, and he had a very successful first fight against Nathan Williams, who was only 13-7 at the time, to be fair. But the wins that Don Madge does have, he fought Tay Edwards after the GOAT fought him. I think the GOAT, Artem Lobov, actually fought T. Edwards first in a clinical performance, to be fair, from the GOAT. And then he beat Freeze who's actually a pretty good prospect as well. He submitted Nathan Williams. Now he's fighting the winner of the 2021 PFL tournament, which is pretty crazy, in Raush Manfio. But I will be picking Don Madge to win the fight by a decision on this one here. I think he's a great up-and-coming prospect. He's an older guy. He's 31.5, and he's got a lot of eyes on him. Especially considering he did win 4 months ago after about two-year layoff. He hasn't been fighting often, but now that he's in PFL, he is going to have to fight pretty often because that's how the tournament system works. He's got a height advantage, he's got a reach disadvantage, but I think that we're going to see Don Madge beat Raush Manfio inside the octagon. Clay Collard versus Jeremy Stephens. You know what, like when this fight was first announced, I actually did pick Jeremy Stephens to win by knockout, but the more I think about it, the more I do think that Clay Collard is just a little bit better. Clay Collard's got really good boxing. In case you guys didn't know, he actually left MMA to fight boxing full-time for a bit, and then he came back. He fought Anthony Pettis after a decent layoff, about a 2-year layoff or so, and he did win by decision as a big underdog there. He cashed as a big underdog. Then he beat Jolton Lutterbeck by split decision, and then he got robbed pretty badly by Raush Manfio. In my opinion, he definitely won that fight. The judges completely stole it from him, man, 7 months ago. It's pretty sad. Actually, you know what? Let's go to our MMA decisions just so I can kind of prove, or I'm going to look really stupid. But I thought that Clay Collard did win that fight pretty clearly, in my opinion. There's no media scores available, unfortunately, but a lot of people gave round 1 and 2 to Collard on the whatever on the fan scoring, if that makes any sense. So that's absolutely insane. I don't know how anyone did give Manfio the fight, but hey man, it just is what it is, I guess. I thought Clay Collard won the first 2 rounds pretty convincingly. He got robbed in my opinion, and now he's fighting Jeremy Stephens. Jeremy Stephens obviously coming off a really big losing streak, or I guess a winnable streak, I guess, because he does have a no contest thrown in there. But he hasn't won a fight since 2018, so actually he has been fighting very often. He's fought 6 times since 2018. He just hasn't won any of those fights, man. And yeah, but the guys he's been losing to are very game opponents. Mateus Gamrot, Calvin Kattar, Yair Rodriguez Zabit, and Jose Aldo. All of those guys are actually very good opponents. And you know what? Like, that's actually not too bad of a of a losing streak to have, considering the level of competition. But the thing is, he hasn't won in so long. He's on a losing streak. The momentum really is not in his favor whatsoever. He's fighting a guy that's pretty game in Clay Collard, who just most recently beat Anthony Pettis. He beat Jordan Rudderbeck, and I think that he beat Raush Manfio as well. He's going to have good striking. He's also got a pretty good wrestling game as well if he needs to go to it. Jeremy Stephens, as we know, has got a lot of power in the hands, but unfortunately we haven't seen that for so long. I'm going to be picking Clay Collard to win a decision in this one here, and I do genuinely believe that we're going to see Clay Collard beat Jeremy Stephens up at 155 pounds. And that's kind of my picks for the PFL, man. Sorry, it's a little bit tired, so it's a little bit quiet, but it's I'm just so tired, man. I literally just woke up from a nap and woke up and was like, oh my god, I just fell asleep. And yeah, I know you guys probably didn't want to know that, but anyway, like I'm gonna pick in Collard to win the main event. But this is a great start to the event. I think there's a few 155-pound bouts that aren't on this one. I know Anthony Pettis is fighting someone else on a different card, but I think that all of the 205-pounders are on this card, and including Rob Wilkinson, man, my underdog, a big underdog in my opinion, that I think could cash. And yeah, I'll leave you guys in the next one.